Hi and welcome to this free IELTS reading video. My name is Chris and today we're going to look at a number of different reading question types for the IELTS exam. Let's take a look at the types of question that we're going to focus on. Those three types are yes, no, not given. We will look at sentence completion and finally we'll look at multiple choice. So in order to do this you need to download a PDF. The link is below this video. Make sure that you download that and read it. You only have 20 minutes to finish this task. You need to read the text and answer the question within 20 minutes. You will need to pause this video and set yourself a timer. Alright? So I want you to pause this video and begin reading now. Okay, all done. Welcome back. Did you answer all the questions? Was it easy? Was it difficult? We'll have a look at some of the answers now. So let's move swiftly to question 1. It's really important that you make a note of the language and whether it's positive or negative, affirmative or negative. So in this particular case, it says that young, healthy people were more likely to contract the flu, right? So where did you find that in the text? Where did you find it? Well, I found it within this section here. All right, it's right at the beginning of the text. And I noticed that it says right at the very end of that section, the fittest were among the most vulnerable. Okay, the fittest were among the most vulnerable. If we look at the question again, we will notice that it says that young, healthy people, they will be the fittest, were more likely to contract the flu. Therefore, they are more vulnerable. So in this particular case, the answer is going to be yes. Okay, the answer is yes. We make a note of that here. Yes. Easy? Let's have a look at the next question, which says the elderly, okay, were less prone to the 1918 flu because most had a vaccine against this strain. So where did we find any information about a vaccine? Well, I found something about the elderly people in this section here. It talked about the elderly just here. However, there's no mention of a vaccine. Okay, so the answer to this is not given because there is no mention of the vaccine. Does that make sense? All right, so let's have a look at question 3. Question 3 says, so the answer to question 2 is not given. Question 3 says, residents of urban areas were affected by the 1980 flu less than those who lived in the countryside. So you have to remember the section that talked about where people lived. And I found that in this section here, which says that cities tended to suffer worse than rural areas. So cities were affected more than rural areas. If we look at the question, we will say that residents of urban areas were affected by flu less. Therefore, the answer to this question is no. Okay? The answer to question 3 is no. Question 4 says, socioeconomic factors heavily influence the death toll. So we need to focus on socioeconomic factors. That might be where people live, whether they're poor or rich, okay, whether they are immigrants. And I remember something about that in this section here, which says that the poor and ethnic minorities, so the poor, the immigrants and ethnic minorities were more susceptible. Okay, so let's look at the question, and the question says socioeconomic factors heavily influenced the death toll. Alright, so it influenced it strongly. Therefore, the answer to this question is yes. Okay. Question 5 says the 1918 flu is history's most significant pandemic. In answer to this question, we need to think about whether it says most significant pandemic or the history of this particular flu. I found that at the end of the passage, and it says that the the flu cast a long shadow, all right, over the 20th century. However, it doesn't mention, okay, it doesn't mention that it's the most serious pandemic, okay? It doesn't mention that it's the most serious pandemic. So the answer to this question would be not given, okay? It doesn't say that it's the most significant pandemic. So the answer to question 5 is not given. And question 6 says, those people who survived the flu tended to suffer from reproductive problems. Okay? Those people who survived the flu tended to suffer from reproductive problems. I remember something about reproduction. Let's see, I think it was also at the end. It mentions that the healthier population that was able to reproduce at higher rates. So this is contradictory. It's the opposite of what we find in the question. So let's have a look at the question again, and the question says, those people who survived the flu tended to suffer from problems. Well, that's not the case. They were actually more successful when they were reproducing. So the answer to this question is no. Is that clear? All right, let's move on to question 7. So questions 7, 8, 9 and 10 are sentence completion questions. That means that you have to look at the first part of the sentence and you've got to match it with the second part of the sentence. I'd like you to focus a little bit on grammar here. Is it plural? Is it singular? Is it the past? Is it the present? Or is it the future? Those might be some helpful tips when you sit your exam. So they have to match. Make sure that your subject and your verb agree. Okay? Let's look at the particular starts of these sentences. So the first one, we would look at scientists. Okay? So that would be plural. All right? That would be plural. People would also be plural. Okay? In 1918, people. So number 9 would be plural, but I'd like you to focus about it being in the past. All right, so it's quite important to notice that it's going to be in the past. And number 10 is the flu of 1918. It's going to be singular and also in the past. So singular in the past. Right, let's have a look at each one of those. So, the first one, scientists. Now, I remember that it talked about scientists, and if we look at the place where I found my answer, I'll notice that it says that scientists are still struggling to find an answer to why the pandemic or the flu was so serious. If we look here, it says, this is nowhere near complete, okay? We understand the picture, we know it's more detailed today, but it's not complete, all right? And it says that researchers over the world are working hard to answer those questions. So if we look at the most appropriate answer here, we will notice that the answer is going to lie in F here. It says that scientists do not completely understand the nature of the 1918 pandemic. So the answer to question 7 is F. All right. 8, people. Now, if we look at these, we can say people usually build their most effective resistance to flu against the first subtype they encounter. That seems quite logical to me, and in every case in reading you have to find the part of the text. So let's look at where I found that. In this part it says that a person's immune system mounts its most effective response just here to the first strain of flu it encounters. That's your answer. All right, so that would be where you found the answer to question 8. So question 8, the answer would be A. I'll mark answer A there for you now. So 8 would be A. Question 9. In 1918, people. Now this one is going to be in the past. Do we agree that it's going to be in the past? People with pre-existing medical conditions were more susceptible to complications from the flu. That seems quite logical to me, but we have to find the place in the text where it says that. Where did it say that in the text? It says it right here. People who were suffering from underlying diseases had more susceptibility to the flu. That's where you would find the answer to question 9. All right. So let's go back to the question, and we would say that question 9, the answer is B. And question 10, the flu of 1918, well, it cannot develop resistance. That's not the right answer to question 10. Are using clues from other flu pandemics. A flu can't use clues, so it can't be D. The flu did not have access. Again, that doesn't relate to the flu. Do not completely understand. Well, the flu cannot understand anything. So the answer to question G is had significant impact on future generations. So the answer to question 10 is G. We have to make sure we find it in part of the text. Let's look at question 10. Where did we find it? I found it in this section, which said, the 1918 flu cast a long shadow over the 20th century, and we should bear in mind as we prepare for a new one. Okay? That's where you find the answer to question 10. Moving on to question 11 now. We will have a look at question 11. 11 is a multiple choice question, and the first question relates to Jeffrey Taubenberger. You'd have to find his name in the text. All right? So what does Jeffrey Taubenberger say? Well, actually he says that there is still further research required. Okay, that's right at the beginning of the text. If I show you that, he says that Jeffrey Taubenberger right here says that there are still many unanswered outstanding questions. There's your answer. Okay, and finally question 12. Question 12 is related to eugenicists. Now, you'd have to find the word eugenicist because it's a specific word. You'll find it in the text. What did they think? All right. Eugenicists was listed in this following paragraph. Now, the eugenicists, it says here specifically, they liked to claim that people were constitutionally inferior. And they were wrong. But that's what they believed at the time. They thought that people were constitutionally inferior. Which question answers that, or which answer gives that as a statement? We will find that it says it here. It says that they thought that ethnic minorities were inferior to other members of the population. So the answer to question 12 is B. There is the reading about the flu. I hope that you found it useful. In every case, you have to find a suitable place in the text. And also, if you have time, something really important in the exam, go back and eliminate all of the other options, and you can really be sure that your answer is the correct one and the other answers are incorrect. Hope you found this useful. If you did, please like this video. You can share it or subscribe on YouTube to the other videos in my channel. Wishing you a nice week. Take care. Thanks.